about to get started. If you could all grab and take your seats, please. We'll be starting in just 1 minute. Please go ahead and take your seats. The mayor will be arriving and we'll be starting in 1 minute. Thank you. No one can hear?
It's so quiet, so maybe, yeah.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? All right. If you could go ahead and take your seats, please. We are about to get started shortly. We'll be getting started in about 1 minute, maybe 2. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to SF Climate Week. Woo! My name is Vikram Iyer, and I am the head of public policy at Heirloom. As you may know, we are a startup that is on a mission to remove 1 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere by 2035, and we cannot be more thrilled to host you and be with you all today. We wanted to express our sincere thanks to ClimateBase, and our community for gathering technologists, academics, policymakers, and climate advocates across the country for San Francisco's first ever Climate Week. And we're really excited because not only do we have our epic sponsors that have made this event happen, from the One Hotel to the Autodesk Foundation to Mithun to Ezo Creative, to Nat and Cody Photography, but I also just really want to thank my colleague Alexa Dennett that made this event happen from Heirloom. Let's give her a round of applause. It's no coincidence that Climate Week's marquee event, honoring some of the industry's top CEOs, is also joined by the City of San Francisco's Chief Executive Officer. And there's no coincidence that we're gathered here today in this city, at this hotel, because just a stone's throw away, as some of you may have seen on your walk-in, we're gathered in front of the iconic Bay Bridge connecting commerce and culture across the region. And we're standing right in front of a major port for the entire United States and a really critical sea line across the Pacific coast that is potentially at risk of being impacted by the extreme effects of climate change. And that's why we're reminded of every tech CEO that is up here today that when they think about their technologies and their pathways for innovation, they're thinking about exactly what's at stake right here in the Bay Area, those specific and precious assets from a climate impact perspective, and assets like that in cities around the country. But before we get to that conversation, I think it's important to recognize what unites us in this common moment right now here in the Bay Area, and that is the special sauce and the special ingredient in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, the world often reveres the city of San Francisco for ushering in new innovations, from autonomous vehicles to dating apps to augmented reality. But what you may not know, and what we'll learn today, is that this city continues to innovate under the leadership of its mayor, Mayor London Breed, for its climate resilience and climate strategies. They were one of the first cities in the entire country to pioneer ambitious net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Their world-class airport, SFO, that some of you may have flown into to make this trip possible, they are constantly innovating when it comes to greener footprints and having airline partners undertaking serious efforts to set net zero carbon emission standards and sustainable aviation fuel alternatives. This is a town that recognizes that climate change is not just about the tech, it's about the racial and equitable impacts that are felt by so many communities around the country, but certainly here in the Bay Bay Area, and this is a city that launched the first ever scale oil to biofuel program, pioneered 100% renewable mandates, and has cleaned up our region's water system with a multi-billion capital investment. And that is a city that is only able to do that, and a region that's only able to do that because our mayor understands that this is only possible with the enduring public-private partnerships of new startups and new technology companies that are coming online, not just to ship the best software for having convenience in your pockets, but to ship the best hardware and software to make sure we can reimagine a new world that is climate resilient, that is equitable in its jobs transition, and is mindful of a racial equity transition when we think about a new era of climate jobs. Now, all of this has to do with businesses coming back to downtown, growing in downtown, and this mayor has also spent a fair bit of time talking to CEOs like the one on stage today to be mindful of what else can the Bay Area do to attract businesses back to San Francisco, to make sure it continues to hum as a theory of innovation, but most importantly, to make sure that it is a driving region of our national climate response. I have had the privilege and pleasure to stand by this mayor on more than one occasion, but today, under these auspices, it's the most exciting time and my honor to be able to introduce her because she has not only been a champion of small businesses and startup growth, but she is a leader for a cleaner, more friendly, and smarter, more sustainable Bay Area that will lead the world. Ladies and gentlemen, our mayor of San Francisco, London Breed.
Wow, Vikram, you said everything that I was going to say today. So thank you for doing my job. I really appreciate being here, and I especially appreciate being here with so many of you and many of our tech CEOs and folks who not only care about climate resiliency, but care about how we're going to create the appropriate infrastructure to prepare for the future, to make this more normal than it has been in the past. And San Francisco has definitely been at the forefront of innovative solutions around climate change, and we are looking forward to implementing our climate action plan, which I'm sure all of you in this room have read. And the most important thing in our climate action plan has everything to do with equity and how we really truly focus on the communities that oftentimes have been left out of the conversations, both for the job and the growth and the companies and the startups and all the things that we need to do, but also the decisions that we've made that have impacted communities. And just a quick example, the Bayview Hunters Point community, where the sewage treatment plant, the power plant, and a number of other things that help to make sure that this city is run appropriately over the decades. Those are the communities which are predominantly African American and minority communities where many of those things occurred. But also what we noticed through a lot of research is that high rates of cancer, high rates of asthma, and this community was tremendously impacted. In a couple of years, even before I was on the Board of Supervisors, this city took a lot of initiative in closing down those power plants and making changes to this community to help get us on a path of changing the outcomes, the disparities that continue to exist in this community. But I was most proud of the work that I did to bring Clean Power SF to San Francisco when I was on the Board of Supervisors. And then when we rolled out this program, everyone wanted to roll it out in the neighborhoods that were more affluent, that were more likely to pay for, you know, these new green, clean energy. And I said, no, let's do it in the Bayview Hunters Point community. Let's roll it out in this community. And we have seen over 90% of the people enrolled in this program in that community continue to stay in the program and not opt out of clean energy in the Bayview. And that was a real testament to what we need to start doing and how we need to start thinking as a city and as a country in how we build more climate resilient communities. And what does that mean for San Francisco? Well, that means that we have a lot of work to do. And that work is not only what we do to change the climate as a whole with the decisions we make, but what comes with that. These new green jobs that these CEOs and others are creating. San Francisco has seen since, I think, 2020, about a $56 billion investment from venture capitalists to technology companies to grow and create right here in San Francisco. When we see a vacancy rate in San Francisco for information technology and other financial institutions and things like that, a 25% vacancy rate in San Francisco, in our various biotech and clean tech and the tech sector involving the environment and the way that we need to start thinking about the future, it's a 5% vacancy rate. People are looking for lab space, manufacturing opportunities, and other things that are gonna grow this sector. So we're looking forward to this panel and hearing from all of you over the course of the weekend about your interest, about what brought you here to San Francisco, about why you're excited about the future and how you're gonna change the world from here. Because let me tell you, when you talk about climate resiliency and making decisions, the talent is here, the creativity is here, the excitement is here. So I know sometimes social media can go off on a tangent about everything that's wrong with San Francisco. And trust me, there are problems. This is a major city. It's a densely populated city, so it is not without its problems. But today represent what is right about San Francisco in leading the country and leading the world on climate technology and the way of the future and how we are gonna reduce greenhouse gas emissions, how we're gonna reduce waste, how we're gonna continue to build housing along transit corridors and all the things that are gonna make this planet a better place for future generations. That's what this is about, and the time is now. The time is now to move forward. The time is now to invest. The time is now to change because we have alternatives. We have alternatives to a cleaner, greener, more vibrant future. And so I'm looking forward to, again, hearing about the conversations. I know most of you probably came here to party too, so don't forget to get out and enjoy some of the restaurants and enjoy San Francisco and have a good time as you work on these new innovative solutions to change the city and to change the world. Because I will tell you, mayors from all over the world called us after we released our climate action plan, asking us to send it to them, asking us to talk, inviting our various departments. Tryone Jue is here, who is going to be moderating this, asking our people to come to their cities to talk about the work that we're being done. We've been working with Bloomberg Philanthropies and others who really care about making these investments. So one of the last things I want to say is that part of what is important to me, similar to what we did to the Bayview when rolling out the program, it's not just about what you do for the community, it's what you do with the community. And what I am also looking forward to in creating this whole new job sector is how do we make the connection between the residents of the Bayview Hunters Point and these new climate technology opportunities that will exist as a result. So working with organizations like the Jewish Vocational Center or Mission Hiring Hall or young community developers. These are the people that are directly connected to the community, and we want to make sure that even our kids in the San Francisco Unified School District are able to make some sort of connection with what we're doing here today, and so that they can truly be part of making change in their communities. All of this is going to really change our world, change our community, change our country for the better. And you all can say, I was there when it first happened, when you're looking back and you're telling your kids and your grandkids, and they're thanking you for the fact that styrofoam is something they never even knew existed, that you can say, I played a role in that. As you know, I did the policy to ban styrofoam in San Francisco. So lots of work, lots of great things, lots of excitement. Let's get fired up and let's save the planet. Thank you again all for being here.
We're going to get this panel started. Just wanted to introduce San Francisco's acting director of the Department of the Environment, who's going to facilitate this conversation. The mayor mentioned Tryone Jue. Tryone Jue has an incredible background I think is really important to understand and just contextualize this conversation, because even though the mayor spoke quite a bit about San Francisco Bay Area, and a number of you are building companies that may be well outside of this reach, where cities are participating in decarbonization efforts and setting rich and really rigorous, ambitious climate targets is how a lot of new innovative startups are gonna end up taking root and playing ball. And I do think that public-private partnership as both a petri dish of how do you grow businesses that need lab space, that need regulatory sandboxing for testing, all of that is being facilitated by Tryone and his proactive partnership with the private sector. Tryone specifically has advised everybody from previous San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown and Ed Lee to current Governor of California Gavin Newsom. He's kind of actually the talent that you might want to end up poaching after this panel today. He launched Clean Power SF. That's the community program that the mayor mentioned that gives residents a more proactive choice to be able to lean into renewables when it comes to opting into renewable energy off the grid. He ran the region's oil to biofuel program, and he helped manage the country's, or the city's rather, first municipal program. And I'll just end with this. This might sound super wonky or nerdy, but he's actually on the board of directors for the Bay Area's Regional Air Quality Management Board, which right here in San Francisco, that is the entity that actively makes sure that any dirty air from the port or any impact to our waterways is cleaned up and dealt with, and that is something Tryone works on day to day. So from the public sector to advancing new innovative programs to making sure that we can drink clean water, Tryone has navigated a whole host of environments, and we're really excited to have him kick off our panel today. Ladies and gentlemen, Acting Director of the SF Department of the Environment, Tryone Jue.
Thank you, Vikram, man. And just it's so wonderful to see so many people gathered here. They're not gathered here for me. They're gathered here for the three individuals we're about to hear from. The three individuals that are going to be participating in this panel are truly pioneers, and I say that with all honesty. Each of them is doing amazing work in the climate space, and this is the work that we need to foster, we need to encourage, we need to do more of. And so to learn about their stories, their company stories, their background, how they're approaching issues like equity and the economy, and how this all kind of ties together is going to make for an illuminating conversation. I always hate going after Mayor Breed because she is such an amazing speaker and leader, but I have no doubt these three are going to do a wonderful job. So let me introduce our panel for today. Going from my right, we have Shashank Samala, who is the CEO and co-founder of Heirloom. To his right, we have Nika Massouf, co-founder and CEO of Ruby Labs. And then to her right, we have Diego Saez-Gil, founder and CEO of Pachima. And I'm going to let each one of them take a turn at explaining what their company is focused on and what they're doing in the space. So let's just start with that. So we'll go right to left, starting with Shashank. Please introduce yourselves and what you're working on in your technologies.
Thanks so much, Tryone. Thank you so much for organizing this, and super excited to be here. I'm Shashank. I grew up in Southeast India, where I saw firsthand impacts of climate change on incredibly vulnerable people who had little to do with creating the problem in the first place. That inspired me to start a carbon removal technology that can remove billions of tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to help reverse climate change. And a few years ago, together with Dr. Noah McQueen, we started a company called Heirloom with the mission of removing 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2035. And Heirloom is a low-cost direct air capture technology. We use something called limestone, which you probably are very familiar with. It's one of the most abundant minerals on the planet. It's able to naturally suck up CO2. We give superpowers to make limestone suck up carbon much, much faster. Naturally, it would take months or years. Now it takes about 3 days. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nika, co-founder and CEO of Ruby. I've always been passionate about taking inspiration from nature to unlock abundance and prosperity for people on the planet. I started actually by growing up here in the Bay Area. When I was 15, I published my first paper on artificial photosynthesis, and that was really my first stint in using science and engineering to create new ways of manufacturing and the economy that support the climate goals that we're working towards and towards a planet positive future. So that led me to eventually, with my twin sister, co-found Ruby Labs. And what we do is we've developed a tech that's inspired by how trees work that allows us to capture CO2 and using natural enzymes turn that CO2 into useful products. The same products that we're already using today, like textiles, building materials, food, packaging, and more. So really just reinventing the paradigm of manufacturing. We think that the future of manufacturing must be symbiotic with the planet, and what we're trying to enable is making the same important things that humanity needs for prosperity through a process that's actually carbon negative and planet positive. So really excited to be here, and thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diego. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Pachama. And our mission is to help restore nature to solve climate change. As you guys know, nature is the biggest carbon sink that we have. Forests sequester carbon and turn it into biomass. And we need to protect the forests that we have, and we need to restore forests. There's 2 billion hectares around the planet that can be restored, and we could be sequestering several gigatons of carbon every year and avoiding several gigatons of emissions by stopping deforestation. So what we do is we use satellite data, LiDAR, AI, to measure how much carbon is there on a forest. The same technologies that we use to drive self-driving cars here in San Francisco, we use it to measure and monitor the carbon sequestration of forest, and then use that data to ensure the integrity, the quality, and the impact of carbon credits that are used to finance that reforestation and conservation. I grew up in Argentina. I saw the impacts of deforestation in South America. It's very sad, but we continue to destroy the Amazon rainforest at an astonishing rate. We, my co-founder, who's also from Argentina, we started here in San Francisco, this company, because we wanted to harness these incredible technologies that we have at the service of nature and helping solve climate change.
Thank you. It's interesting hearing kind of the personal stories. I mean, we've all kind of seen probably the UN report that says we have less than a decade to avert the catastrophic warming that might occur if we don't take action. We're hearing kind of the 3 different kind of prongs, if you will, as far as how each of your companies is trying to tackle this immense challenge. We'll start with Diego. How confident are you in the maturation of the technology you're developing in being able to scale in time to kind of meet this challenge? And then what are the main challenges or obstacles that you're seeing right now towards meeting that goal?
Yeah, so you wrote a paper about artificial photosynthesis, but actual photosynthesis been under development for billions of years, and it's a very mature technology. It works. But the technologies that we develop is a convergence of several technologies that have been improving exponentially. Satellites, right? We have now hundreds of satellites with all sorts of sensors orbiting the planet, sequestering or capturing data, hyperspectral data, LiDAR data, high-definition images, right? In parallel to that, we had a huge advance in cloud computing. Now we can store and train models in terabytes of data in GPUs and cloud. And we have AI that can build these incredible models, and we're seeing with ChatGPT what AI can do today. We're applying those technologies combined together to understand the state of our forest, the health of our forest, the deforestation drivers of our forest. And of course, there is a lot of work that needs to be done to reduce the uncertainty of the predictions that are done with these technologies. But I think that what we've seen in the last 4 years of our company existence is an incredible progress that makes us very excited about what we can do with these technologies to better manage this solution, which is nature itself.
Great. Nika, how do you feel?
Yeah. The entire motivation of developing our technology was really focused on creating something that can actually achieve these massive goals of carbon reduction. And the way we approach it and our perspective is really there needs to be a new way of manufacturing things. We can't just, do things that are kind of on the side of the issue. We really want to create a new way of creating prosperity and products and everything that we rely on as a society in a way that's actually carbon negative, and importantly, at price parity, scalable, and something that can integrate into industry. And so that's exactly what we're doing, and that's how we've defined the tech. We're really just trying to replace current really energy-intensive manufacturing methods with something that can be planet positive. And I think the important thing there related to Pachama is we just want to let trees be trees. We want to completely avoid the traditional paradigm of agriculture and deforestation to use in human-based products. We can instead do that through bioproduction using our technology, and in that way you can let forests be forests, and you don't need to harvest millions or billions of trees to make textiles every year. And I would say like the big challenges for us are definitely in scaling each incremental step of our new technology, but we've had an amazing track record over the last year of scaling up from what was once a small test tube to now a production system that is working with actual retailers and manufacturers in industry to make this a reality today. And yeah, we're really excited for us to continue scaling. Our big goals are really focused on, one, helping the apparel industry drop out as the third most CO2 polluting supply chain on the planet to out of the top 10, and then do the same thing with the building materials industry and the food industry. And that's something that as we scale our tech, because we're actually replacing the manufacturing methods with something that's carbon negative, it's something that we feel really feasible in the next few years by 2030.
It's really exciting. Shashank?
So when you remove carbon from the air, it really doesn't make an impact unless it's at billion-ton scale, right? Like it's sort of like, if not, it's sort of like pulling a bucket of water from an ocean. It doesn't actually make an impact. What we're trying to do is figure out what is the fastest path to scale. And the oil and gas industry, right? It extracts about 4 billion tons of fluid today, and that took about 150 years to scale. What does that? We only have about a couple of decades to get to that billion-ton scale with carbon removal. So there is no playbook to emulate that. What gives me hope is, just in the last 20 months or so, we went from a petri dish, which basically is about grams of CO2 captured from the air, to kilograms, to hundreds of kilograms, to tons, now hundreds of tons. That all happened over about 18 to 20 months. And that is a pace of progress, pace of scale up that we need to have if we want to meet the millions and billions of ton scale. And that's really thanks to the amazing execution by our team. But it's also thanks to using limestone, right? Limestone is an abundant sponge that is available. It's a rock that is so abundant. There's trillions of tons of limestone in the Earth's crust. So basically, if you want to remove more carbon, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of the sponge out there that we can use to scale up. In terms of challenges, like other CDR companies, we need to sequester CO2 permanently. So that means having Class 6 permitted wells, underground storage wells to store the CO2. And currently, there's only about 2 permitted wells in all of the US. And there's about 60 in the queue. And the Department of Energy and EPA are working on getting them online. And that is a key bottleneck that we face. Because of that, we became the first company recently to store CO2 into concrete. So CO2 from the air going into concrete to store that CO2 permanently. That will provide us a medium-term storage mechanism to permanently sequester carbon while we wait for the geological storage wells to come online. And the third thing I would say is we're always looking for companies buying high-quality permanent carbon removals to join the likes of our other customers, Microsoft, Stripe, Shopify, Klarna, and others.
That's great. I mean, it's just hearing the diversity and kind of your approaches. There was a similarity there where it all starts with a petri dish. So for all of you researchers or people thinking you're just staring under a fume hood, looking at a petri dish, a lot of great things start there and scale. So talking about kind of that innovation research, let's shift a little bit to the reasons why your companies are located here in kind of the San Francisco Bay Area and in San Francisco. You've made this a conscious choice, obviously. You could have located anywhere, right? And what was it that attracted you and your company to locate in this area? And we'll start with Shashank first.
Sure. So first, I would say is talent, and specifically the variety and diversity of talent that we need. We need everyone from mechanical engineers, software engineers, controls engineers, process, material scientists, chemists, chemical engineers. So that variety of all this diversity of talent comes together harmoniously to build this unique technology, and Bay Area is a great place for that. And also folks who have experience scaling companies fast, right? And that's something that Silicon Valley and Bay Area has really trained to do in traditional technology, and we need to bring that same velocity of scaling to climate technology. So talent is one. The other one is around capital. Obviously, venture capital is, we understand this is a hotbed for VC activity, but more importantly, especially as we navigate a tricky economy right now, it's always important to source to have new sources of capital. And California is leading, has a few legislative proposals that's leading in this direction. So one of them is, a government procurement of carbon removals. The other one is, ensuring that the polluters pay for carbon removals, and also through the California Energy Commission, using R&D funding for direct air capture and CDR in general. So those types of new sources of capital that California is leading on is key for us. So third, I would say, is equity and inclusion, something that Mayor Breed was talking about. I grew up in a region where the worst impacts of climate, the extreme weather events, always impacted the poorest. So it's always top of mind for me to ensure that equity for climate change and its impacts are considered. We don't want to build a technology that only works for some people. We want to build a technology that works for all of humankind. And that means that having equity and environmental justice as a consideration when we deploy. And I really admire San Francisco because it was probably one of the first in the city to have an action plan, climate action plan with racial equity, public health, and economic resilience. It's central to that action plan, across all backgrounds, income levels. And that is a template, I think, needs to be emulated across the nation.
Nika?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with a little bit of a personal background. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My parents, as they were fleeing as political refugees from the Middle East, they decided to come settle here in San Francisco. And so I grew up here surrounded by the redwood trees and the coastline that we have here. And what I realized growing up is San Francisco really uniquely has a high concentration of people who admire and love being in nature. And I think that's a really unique aspect of this area that we've seen carry on through our hiring. The other piece I'll add is my family, as we were kind of building roots here, we also had a very great experience with starting a business here in San Francisco. So my uncle is the founder of a retail brand called BB Stores, B-E-B-E. It's like a women's clothing brand. You might have seen it. And most people don't know this, but that was started in San Francisco. So the first store was on Polk Street, and then it grew from there and was able to grow into a $3 billion business. And I think a lot of the uniqueness about the culture here in San Francisco, the opportunity for developing new products and basically concepts that were fresh and new and different from brands before, I think really resonated with that founding journey, and then me growing up with that experience. So I think coming in with that experience and then going to university here, UC Berkeley, starting working in industry in SF, I just have a really intimate experience with why San Francisco is the best place to start a company. And I think tactically, when you're starting a company, the big important things are talent. And I think for our company, technical talent is critical. And there's so much amazing talent available from Berkeley, Stanford, and other universities around here, too, with technical skills for developing a new technology, scaling companies. And then also, I think a lot of the regulations here in the Bay Area and in California allow us, as we're just creating our first production facility, all of our electricity comes from solar. And so that's something that's just an easy solve where we can power our production using renewable energy, where I think if we started this company anywhere else, that would be something that we'd need to finance or figure out ourselves. So I think there's a lot of great talent pools and also infrastructure here that really lends itself to sustainability and companies like ours growing and starting here. And also I just think that culture and love of nature here in the Bay Area, you find the talent that wants to solve climate issues, and they are just super motivated personally, and I think that's a huge factor in building a great team.
Thank you. Diego, how's your experience been, and what went into your decision?
Yeah, so super frankly, for me, I love living here. I love nature. I cannot believe...
That's okay, too. That's okay.
Yeah. I cannot believe that we have these giant redwoods so close to the city, and Big Sur and Marine. And this weekend I was in Mendocino, and I was like blown away by the nature that we have around. And Yosemite is so close as well. So I just love living here. I lived in many cities. I lived in New York, in Barcelona, in Hong Kong, in Santiago, in Buenos Aires, and here. And I just think this is the best. And when it came to starting the company, in one hand, the Bay Area also has a long history of environmental leadership. John Muir was the first American environmentalist. He was here. Joanna Macy's was a big philosopher of ecology starting in the 60s around this area. And then technology, of course, Silicon Valley, and all the history of innovation that this city and this area has fostered. So we really thought that it was very aligned with the DNA of what we wanted the company to be. Our first investors were here. The first investors that we got was Y Combinator. And actually, 2 blocks from here was our demo day, where we pitched Pachama for the first time, and we got our first seed round done, again, pitching investors in the streets of San Francisco. We hired the first people here, and then we have 3 Pachama team members here who we met through networking in the city. So great capital, great talent, great place to live. We are a remote company, and we have hires all around the world now, but San Francisco continues to be our headquarters, our headquarters, as we call it as well, and we bring people here. And it's also amazing that people come to San Francisco, and now it's back, right? And people from all over the world come here, so I don't have to travel a lot to meet people. They come to me, so many reasons.
Okay, I'm going to recommend to Mayor Breed that she hires Diego, Nika, and Shashank as our ambassadors for tourism and also for business to come into the city. So we talked about the positive of kind of regulatory kind of policies, like influencing your decision for each of your companies to locate here. Let's also go to kind of where regulation and policies and sometimes get in the way of kind of innovation and companies wanting to locate in an area. We heard from Mayor Breed. She's obviously very focused on revitalizing our downtown core. I've been to other cities. Every major city is facing the same struggle as we figure out a new paradigm, a new work paradigm, and what kind of companies might be suitable. What are some of the things that city government, let's say San Francisco, could do better if we wanted to attract more companies like Pachama, like Heirloom, or like Ruby? And we'll start with Diego.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mayor Breed is making the right decisions in many things. I saw today the announcements of the housing rules that are coming. We need more housing, We need to address the homeless situation and people who are suffering in the streets. And I think that these two things alone would make a huge positive change for the city. I think in addition to that, we need to continue fostering policies that allow companies to do things such as investing in labs, and we need more ability to attract funding, right, for companies. We need to continue welcoming immigrants. We get the job done. And
Let's give a round of applause for all of our immigrants.
And I trust that government officials, have their heart in the right place, and we have to move faster.
How about you, Nika?
Yeah, absolutely. +1 to those points. I think the big tactical challenge for us has been really, lab space and office space, and I think that's an area that San Francisco's downtown has been really focused on a specific sector, maybe more like software leaning. And I think there's a massive opportunity to be able to attract more companies like ours if we incentivize development of some of that office space to be equipped for more hard tech companies, climate tech companies like ours. It's simple things like potentially partnering with some of the developers that I think are doing an awesome job in East Bay, developing out Alameda and other areas, and that's actually where we're located right now. I think the location of the offices right now in downtown SF could be awesome for climate tech companies like ours. They're just not set up quite yet to be able to house lab work, production space, et cetera. So I think partnering with developers to kind of improve some of the downtown spaces to make room for upcoming climate tech companies would be a huge thing. And then also public transit. I'd say right now to a lot of the more affordable office spaces and places that are developed for biotech and climate tech, there's really not a lot of public transit options, and so our employees have a hard time. They live in SF, and then they have to go to East Bay, and there's not a lot of public transit all the way down to our office. So I think there's a lot of thoughtfulness that we can add to make sure that affordable lab and office space is there, and that there's the right public transit to make it easy and straightforward for companies like ours to just do what we do best, which is building the tech and doing the work.
Thank you for that. Shashank?
Yeah, so growing up, I moved a lot. So when people ask me where is home, I say San Francisco, and I really consider this place to be my home, and I want the best for it. And although we started our business here in Dogpatch, I do think there are some headwinds for San Francisco, and so I say that to not to complain, but to be in the spirit of honesty, to figure out what is how do we create a hotbed of climate technologies here in SF. So I have a couple recommendations. One is really around creating a sandbox for innovation. Physical space is a key component of that, right? Software companies need desk space, monitors. Climate technology companies have a wide diversity of needs around lab, production, manufacturing, prototyping, warehouse. There is some of that in San Francisco, but not a lot. I started a couple of companies, the one before this, Tempo, where we built and scaled manufacturing facilities here, but there is a limit. And we actually had to find space somewhere else as we scaled up Heirloom because of this. And so the more physical space around these, the better. So the second one is around a regulatory sandbox. As we test these technologies in the field, as we deploy these out on the field to actually ensure we create impact, we need to ensure that we need to get help from the cities to show communities the impact of our work and ensure that we get community buy-in so that we can actually deploy these technologies in the field. And I think that's something that San Francisco can do a lot better in.
Those are great, and I thank you for your honesty in sharing that, because we're always in the spirit of improvement and trying to figure out how we improve. And I want to pick up on something you just mentioned, Shashank, around kind of bringing communities along. And you mentioned, it's a fundamental kind of foundation for our climate action plan here in the city, and it took 2 years, thousands of people being engaged and involved in that project. And I feel like there's maybe a connection we can make to this growing climate tech space about the effect and direct effect people can have by going for jobs in this area, and the role around equity and jobs and that consideration. So my question, starting with Shashank, is, so climate change affects different communities in different ways, as we've heard. How do you ensure that your technologies are inclusive and responsive to the needs and histories of residents who have been marginalized and stand to be most impacted by the effects of climate change?
Great question. As I was talking about, the whole motivation to start this company was around equity. And we think that social acceptance of our technology, not just acceptance, community excitement about our technology is important. That's the only way we can deploy our technology at scale to actually move the needle on climate change. So for us, what that means is a two-way community dialogue. So what does that mean? So a couple things. One is a community benefits plan. So if you haven't heard of this concept before, it's basically an agreement between the community we operate in and Heirloom, where we outline very clearly the benefits that we bring to the community. It could be money for public infrastructure projects, transit, food access, high quality schools, things that improve and empower the community. And those changes, those improvements to the community could change through the duration of our project, right? Just like solar farms and wind farms, our carbon farms will be staying in these communities for decades. And we want to ensure that we evolve with the community needs during that time. Second part of that is creating good quality jobs. And we're proud to work with the labor unions in California for our deployments in California. And we're committed to paying prevailing wages across the nation. So these are jobs that are just coming into climate tech just now. So we actually need a lot of training programs, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we're committed to working with city governments to ensure that there's training programs to create the next generation of climate workers.
Great, thank you. Nika?
Yeah, amazing question. And at Ruby, our philosophy is really that the people who are solving these problems and the people at Ruby should be the ones who come from communities who are most impacted by climate change. And when you look at the data, that's mainly women and people of color. And then, of course, there's breakdowns of regions and more in that. And that's been Ruby's philosophy since the beginning. So we're a women of color founded company. Our team is made up of mostly women and people of color coming from communities that are most impacted by climate change. And that's something that we continue to prioritize as we're hiring and building our teams, because I think that's really the only way that we're going to create solutions that capture the movement that's happening to create a more climate resilient planet, and things that are going to stick and really address the problems of people who are seeing climate change firsthand. So just a few people on our team right now. We have one of our senior engineers who grew up in an indigenous community in Chile and really saw firsthand changes to that community because of climate. We have another teammate from Ghana who is from a region where you can look at some of the data, but it's one of the regions that's most impacted by textile waste, because all of the textile waste ends up really in that region. So it's my really strong belief that we need to have the people most impacted by climate change actually creating the solution, and that's how we're going to build the best product.
Great, Diego.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys said. And in our case too, the fact that this company is founded by South Americans who come from communities that are and will be impacted by climate change makes it very real. Climate justice and climate reparations are inherent to what we do. What we do is transfer money from the largest corporations in the world to communities that can protect and restore their ecosystems for their own benefit. One of the great things about reforestation and conservation is that it's not just about carbon, it's also about water, it's about food, it's about medicine, it's about an income for local communities. So, but of course, things can go wrong. And they did go wrong in the first generation of carbon credits, in which oil and gas companies went to Mexico and paid $2 per ton and then sold credits for $15 per ton. So we take integrity as a core value, and we try to implement it in everything we do. Early on in our life, we actually brought an expert to facilitate a workshop in which it was a workshop about responsible tech and unintended consequences, right? And he made us imagine how it could go wrong and how our technology could be abused if it works at scale. And we imagine all sort of scenarios in which things could go wrong, and then try to start preventing it and designing systems so that it doesn't. So I think that it's incredibly important for climate tech companies to be very intentional about their designs, think of unintended consequences. Even the best intentioned technologies, sometimes have unintended consequences. And here we're talking about impacts on Earth systems that are going to have an impact for many generations, thousands of years, right? So, but I think that I'm seeing this new generation of founders take it seriously, and I hope that we see more of that.
And focusing on the jobs, for each of your companies, what are the skills and qualities you look for in someone that you're potentially hiring? I'm sure there are people that might be listening online, people that were hired, so you get to hear what went into your hiring process. What kind of influences your decision in whether or not to hire someone? And what are the skills and qualities you look for in an employee?
Yeah, so we have a really high bar, but we look for people who are passionate about climate and nature, people who are inherently motivated to make an impact. And we hire all sort of talents. I think one of the cool things about these climate tech companies is that you need multidisciplinary teams. In our team, we hire scientists, engineers, marketeers, financiers, right? And we bring people from other sectors that have no idea about climate or carbon or nature, sometimes from a technical perspective, but we need those diverse skill sets to be applied to the job of scaling an organization so that the impact can be scaled. We hire people all over the world. As I said, even though San Francisco is our hub, we hire people around the world, and we have people in 15 different countries, and that also brings a very global and diverse worldview into what we build. And right now there's a slowdown in hiring because of the macro environment, but we're going to go back to hiring lots of people soon. And some people are going to be focused on building the technologies. Other people are going to be focused on deploying the technologies. And we're doing a lot of project development. And in those projects also we have a secondary impact on jobs, because those projects then hire people to plant trees and to take care of those forests, right? So in terms of jobs, there's a big impact. And that's why it's important that we scale.
Great. Nika?
Amazing. Yeah, I think similar to us, passion for climate and passion for nature is really central to, as we're building a team, passion is just, the baseline foundation of building a successful team. We've been growing really rapidly. We grew 200% in the last 6 months, and we're still continuing to grow. And I really think that the roles at our company and other climate tech companies involve everyone. We really need everyone working in climate, and it's not just scientists and engineers, it's also just across the board, cross-functional teammates to help not only build the technology, but then scale it, make an impact, manage and grow to the scale, the massive scale that we're trying to hit in the next 10 years. And so for us, science and engineering-wise, it's definitely kind of like biochemistry, bioproduction. I think there's a lot of amazing new programs starting up at universities across the US focused on bioproduction, and a lot of great new funding too for it from the government. So that's been really exciting. And then on the other side, on the business and growth side, it's really people who have done this, but maybe for other companies, like Shashank mentioned. High growth, really how do we make this work for the first time and integrate into massive incumbent industry partners. So yeah, I really think it's a cross-functional problem. And so whatever skills you have, the climate tech industry needs you.
Great. Shashank?
Yeah, so for us, mission is incredibly important. That's sort of table stakes to work at a climate tech company like ours. For us, we start with principles, and our 3 principles are radical honesty, challenging each other, pursuing the truth, our persistent optimism. This is going to be an incredibly tough problem, but together with optimism, with positivity, we can solve incredibly hard problems and maximizing learning rate. We value curiosity, personal growth, the company growth. We start with that. We ensure that those principles are super aligned, and everything else is diversity. Everything else is bringing new thought, new background to thinking about a problem. We're proud to have 80 plus folks here in the Bay Area working on mechanical engineering and software and process, commercialization, etc. But it's not just the traditional tech jobs. We need fabricators, welders, electricians, plumbers, mechanics, right? I think US in general hasn't invested enough into these trades, and we are essentially re-architecting the entire economy. That's what climate technology is doing over the next few decades. Everything in the physical economy has been built using fossil, and that means in order for us to re-architect the entire economy, we need these trades at a massive scale, and we need to figure out how to train these folks, how to get them up to speed. So we're excited to work with city governments to do that.
Maybe picking up on the training, is there anything that cities can be doing to kind of work with climate technology companies on this sort of training and pipeline of jobs leading into these fields?
100%. So would love to work with community colleges and city governments to create carbon management training programs where we essentially are creating pipelines for all of these trades. We believe in the apprenticeship program. We believe in the learn and earn program where we want to help folks come up to speed and then use that as a template to emulate in other parts of the country as well. So to try to create this feedback loop where we can create the next generation of climate workers. And we need a lot of them.
Great. Nika, do you have any thoughts on training?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've definitely seen a lot of exciting progress in state schools here in California of creating new programs for bioproduction and other climate-related production skills. I think we can go even further and really just promote that sort of symbiotic manufacturing mindset across different subjects in universities and schools, and also just vocational training programs. We're really thinking about a different paradigm of manufacturing, and I think it's important to be able to bring that in as an important training point of as we're creating an entirely new economy. Having that difference in mindset and different skills and projects that are related in those programs is really important. So I think what the city could help support probably immediately is working with a lot of our amazing universities and vocational programs to really focus in on the skill sets that the climate tech companies here and across the US need, build programs around that, and even potentially help fund co-ops or internship programs to help further train awesome young people to join into the industry.
Great. Diego?
Yeah, I'm thinking that we need more people training and studying the intersection of ecology and technology, of computer science and earth science. That intersection still is very small, of people being experts on these two things. And here, we have, again, amazing universities who have different schools for the things. But what happens when we put people to study the intersection of these two things? We're going to be hiring a lot of people in that intersection in the future. So it's exciting to see, for example, the new climate school in Stanford. Hopefully every university has a climate school, and hopefully every primary school is a climate school.
Okay, we're gonna start wrapping up. So I have maybe one quick question and then a final kind of concluding thoughts from the panelists. So we've talked about jobs. workers, people you're looking to employ. What about those that have the next best idea, someone in this room, someone listening? What advice would you give to them in terms of kind of how you went through and what you would recommend to them as a startup? We'll start with Diego.
I guess my first advice is to overcome imposter syndrome, which I had when I was starting. I was like, who am I to start a climate company? And back then, there wasn't a climate tech sector. Now there is that. But I think that anybody can start a climate company. You need to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who know the different things that are needed to get started. Number two, you need to embed values and integrity at the heart of the company since day one. Number three, you need to persist, because as you said, it's hard. And starting anything is hard, to be honest. If you start a dating app, it's also hard. But you know, starting a company that hopefully can solve one of the biggest challenges of humanity is especially hard. And you need to persist, and you need to continue believing and making people believe that it's possible despite adversities. And you actually need to make adversity your ally. Adversity is the way, as Marcus Aurelius said. So that's my advice, and I hope that we see more.
Nika, any quick advice?
Yes. My advice for anyone interested in starting a climate tech company is just do it. And similar to the imposter syndrome question, one of the key norms at Ruby, and I think is so important as you're thinking of bringing a new idea to life, is fresh perspectives for unprecedented results. We need everyone's perspectives, and I think it's easy to think, you know, oh, there's all these big companies, you know, that are working across the industry doing this, or there's so many incumbents, how could this idea happen? I'm pretty sure that's probably, you know, what everyone thought when they were starting their company, even like, you know, these massive, like Dow Chemical or something that's now very big. So I think when you just think about it in that perspective, like anyone can do this, and everyone's perspectives are critical to making the solutions that are going to solve this problem. And we need everyone working on this if we want to, you know, have a livable planet in the next few years. I would just recommend learn about the problem, talk to people, and trust your perspective, and just go for it.
Shashank?
Yeah, so I love this quote that you underestimate, you overestimate what you can do in a year, you underestimate what you can do in 10 years. I think it's really true in climate technologies because, you know, unlike, you know, software companies where, you know, it might be possible to scale up companies in a few years, this takes persistence, you know, putting one step in front of the other, and building a company with such a with a long-term mindset. And I think that fundamentally takes a certain type of attitude going in. And I think looking at it as a journey and looking at it as sort of treading your path, finding your way up the mountain, instead of, you know, trying to see, okay, how can I make a quick company here? You know, a lot of these problems in climate tech are very large. You know, if you think about steel and agriculture, shipping, aviation, right? Each part of the emissions portfolio needs a large re-architecture of the economy, and these problems are not easy, and the first solution that you may come up with may only address a part of the problem. So, you know, that's exactly what Mika said. Just dive in, start working on the solution, and be just rigorous, thinking about the company as you know, doing things over a decade. So that's the first advice. The second advice I would give is, you know, all the basics around building great companies still hold, right? And ensuring that your customers, there's customers for what you want to do, and ensuring that there is as low of a green premium for your product as much as possible, and yeah, ensuring that you build good cost models. Like, one of the things I've seen many founders in climate tech do is not build rigorous cost models around how much your stuff costs. At the end of the day, you're competing with fossil fuel products that are very abundant and cheap. So if you're going to create clean products, they have to be price parity. So build really rigorous cost models.
So our final question, we want to end this conversation on a message of hope and positivity. I mean, this is a massive problem that each of you is trying to tackle, but like Shashank said, like each of you is tackling a piece of the problem. And how do you keep yourself inspired in this work? And also, let me for your final thought, what gives you hope for the future?
For me, it's the team that I get to work with. It's just an amazing, amazing, positive, talented, kind set of humans that I get to work, come to work every day and just be inspired. Working on important, hard problems with these folks, and the meaningful relationships that I get to build while going on this journey. It's just an amazing team, and I think, this is a hard problem, as you said, but I think the positivity of collaborating in person, I think gives me a lot of energy personally. The other thing that gives me hope is that just in the last few years, just looking at heirloom, right, in the 18, 20 months, we went from grams to hundreds of tons. And that progress, if you multiply that by, many innovators in climate tech space, in this town, across the country, across the world, if you multiply all of that and you think about, that quote I mentioned, like what are you underestimating happens in 10 years, you really get into this exponential change. Which is what's needed in climate. So that gives me hope, and I think we can create a future where our kids can enjoy summers like we have, swim with coral like we have. I think we can go back to that world, the people coming into this space with the passion and the positivity is what gives me hope.
Nika, what inspires you and what gives you hope?
Yeah, I would say definitely what's inspiring every day to keep pushing and keep solving this big problem is the progress that we see on a weekly or monthly basis on the team. Similarly, we started from the test tube, we're now at production scale, and there were so many challenges along the way, but working with an awesome team and solving those challenges to keep progressing this technology and keep making it a reality. And we really now see this line of sight to this is going to be a real new manufacturing method in the industry at the retail industry scale. That's what's so exciting. And each challenge, it's like, well, we solved the last 10 challenges. We can work together and solve this one and continue progressing. And I think similar, what gives me hope in the future is really that we're seeing so many innovators come into the space. I mean, the fact that SF has a climate week is so exciting. I think we're just seeing so much progress and development and focus in solving this problem for humanity. And that's just so inspiring and hopeful. And I see us as a society being able to solve like our generational problem by coming together and creating new technology, and that is so hopeful and exciting.
Yeah, in my case, what gives me inspiration is going and visiting the projects that we help. And I was just in February in Brazil visiting a reforestation project in which not only I walked through the little trees that were being planted, but also among the trees that were planted 10 years ago, and it's now a forest. And you can walk through it, and it's super inspiring. And then to talk to the community members who were so happy to see this in their communities. And then I refresh that inspiration going to nature around here and reminding why we're doing this, to do it out of love and not out of fear. And what gives me hope is that I'm able to imagine how it can look like if everything goes right. I think that it's easy to imagine how it's going to look like if things go wrong, right? We see so many dystopian scenarios, right, being painted. And I think that's lazy. I think that it takes more hard work to imagine how it's going to look like if everything goes right, but it's possible. And if you travel to the past, 200 years ago, and you told someone in a country where slavery, genocide, torture was legal and normal, the world that we live today, they wouldn't believe it. So let's imagine what it's going to look like in 100 years if everything goes okay.
On those really positive and inspirational words, we're going to conclude our panel. I want to thank Diego, Nika, and Shashank for being wonderful panelists. I also want to do one recognition also for Climate Base for organizing SF Climate Week and this amazing panel and all the different activities that are happening this week. We hope this is not only the first time we do this, but this is the first of many times that we start to do this here in San Francisco. So thank you to the audience for being here and for being online and for participating.